This summer on the Digital Financial Revolution Tour, we travel to over 30 cities across the U.S. to spread the word about Bitcoin, generational wealth, and financial freedom. By popular demand, the revolution continues. Join the Queen of Crypto, Najah Roberts, and her special guests for a 3-day deep dive this October 21st through the 23rd in the ATL. Get your tickets early because this will sell out. Visit dfrexperience.com for more info.
All right, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of On the Block. I'm super excited. I'm smiling already because this is going to be a great interview because I had the privilege and the honor to meet this gentleman last month. He came to Brooklyn, New York. He is not from Brooklyn, but he's from New York, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But he came and he just lit up the room with his smile, with his size. You don't find too many dudes that are the same size as my husband. Just big dude and really just absolutely incredible. And so I am super excited to be talking to him today about not only himself, his company, the projects that he's working on. We have kindred spirits. We are ready to make sure that those people that are counted out are we're not counting in, we are making it in ourselves, right? So there's just so many things happening in this cryptocurrency space, specifically on the blockchain and in blockchain companies and Bitcoin companies. And so it's just a pleasure to be able to talk to somebody that has the same zeal that we all have here at Crypto Blockchain Plug and the DFR, the Digital Financial Revolution. No matter what arm it is, we are ready to educate our people. So without further ado, I want to introduce to some and present to others, Mr. Adrian Hale. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Najah. Man, I'm good. Things are picking up over here at Foundry, and I'm excited to be able to share some of the stuff we have going on with you and your audience.
Well, absolutely. So I'm just going to ask you to jump in and tell us a little bit about you. Okay. Let us know about you.
Okay. I'm going to try to make it concise because I know people can talk about themselves all day.
And it's okay. You can do that. We want to hear.
Okay. So my name is Adrian Hale. Like Najah said, I'm from New York. I'm from Rochester, New York. And I was born and raised in, a lot of circumstances that many could be familiar with, whether it's drugs, drinking, violence. I mean, you name it. I grew up like most of, inner city kids of color. I'll say sports saved my life. I ran track. I played football. I ran cross country. Anything to go fast, I did. And I felt like going on different meets and playing games at a time kind of kept me focused when a lot of my peers was just kind of going along with what everybody else was doing. And I look back now and I'm grateful for that because I see that, I'm at that point now in life where if you made some bad decisions, they're starting to catch up with you. So when I see a lot of my peers and folks I grew up with, I see and I understand how blessed I truly am to have God, kind of guiding me in a different direction.
Absolutely.
I remember being very young and just knowing that everybody around me was going through, struggling, suffering. And I knew at a very young age, watching my mom struggle and suffer, that I wanted to be somebody who made things easier for people like us. Like I can remember that, like I can remember my name or like being alive. Like that's always just been a part of who I was.
Yeah.
So we had a mayor in Rochester who launched an effort to take over our school district because our schools, a lot of people see it as kind of ground zero in the issues in our community. And so that's kind of when I think politics and government and education, I kind of identified as, solutions to the problem. So fast forward, sports got me through high school. I graduated and I went off to the Marine Corps. I went off to the Marine Corps versus running track because I watched a documentary that changed my life called Fahrenheit 9/11. I watched young Marines fighting and dying in the Iraq War, and it just made a lot of my suffering pale in comparison to what I saw them going through in a war environment. And I realized I was an empath at that same time too. So I joined the Marine Corps. I do 5 years active duty Marines. I do 2 deployments to Afghanistan. And it's then that I saw how much we really did to try to steer young Afghanis away from wanting to support the Taliban, wanting to join Al-Qaeda, and pretty much want to create trouble in their own communities. So, you know, me, little black, nappy-headed Adrian, I'm looking like, well, if we've taken all this money and effort and all these resources, expending them halfway across the world to keep these young kids out of terrorist organizations, why can't we keep kids out of gangs? Why can't we keep kids off drugs? Why can't we get kids through school? Why can't we make an effort to cut down gun violence? Like, why can't we keep kids out of prison and jail and out of court? Like, why can't we solve these issues in America? So now I know I want to go to college.
All right. Before you get to college, because we got to back that up. Because when you first told me that story, I was mouth wide open, still wide open. So I need you to explain to the listeners really what you just said. Because I know some people caught it, but they didn't catch the whole gist of that. So our government is paying millions of dollars to keep, go ahead and explain.
So we did things like training the Afghan police force, training the Afghan army. We brought them food. We built them irrigation creeks and bridges and rivers. Like, we did so much to try to keep them from wanting to, you know, join either Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, which at the time we saw both of them as threats to stability in the country. So we spent a lot of effort trying to get Afghanis to like us and make positive decisions in their lives. And there's something called the rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement are pretty much just a procedure or a process, but it's a set of conditions have to be met in order to escalate force lawfully. And so the rules of engagement in Afghanistan were like extremely tight, meaning it was almost to the point where you had to have a gun at your head in order to return deadly force. So even that, so like being in the military and having tight rules of engagement, regulating escalation of force or use of deadly force, whereas even back home, being black in the inner city, not even seeing those same kinds of rules and regulations beyond our domestic police forces against other U.S. citizens. Right. So it was a big revelation to see the war on terror in theater was not the war on terror I grew up seeing on TV.
Right.
Like, it was a very different reality in Afghanistan. And I could not help but ask myself, I mean, there was so many people, locals, even working on our base, cooking our food, cleaning up, doing our laundry. I mean, so it was just, for me, if we could expend all these resources, take all this time, all this effort, and put all this thought into deterring people from wanting to support terrorist and oppressive regimes on the other side of the world, why can't we bring peace to our inner city streets? And I don't just mean peace against the police, but also peace against one another by improving the conditions that we live in so that we can make more positive decisions. So I knew I wanted to go to college. Like, I knew I want to go to college. I want to figure out how the world works. I want to be a decision maker. Because there were so many times in Afghanistan, we'd have a major mission planned, and then we find out it's postponed until we hear from the Secretary of Defense, or until we hear from the White House, or until we hear from the Pentagon. Like, there were so many times a major mission was postponed or stalled until we heard from somebody higher. So then I realized too, as much as I thought I was making a difference in uniform, the real decisions are, again, in the political realms, like I saw in that mirror back in Rochester, which I'm going to get back to that. So I know I want to go to school. So I come home and I deal with this turbulent reintegration from active duty military to civilian life. And I deal with what many veterans deal with, being away from people you trusted your life with, who are as close to you as family, if not closer to you than family. A lot of the stuff that I left growing up, I was right back in. So it's almost like I was living at 100 miles an hour for 5 years, and then I came home and nothing changed. People didn't change, places didn't change, things didn't change. So that was kind of a culture shock for me too. And now I'm older, so I see things for what they are, and I'm starting to see the cost of growing up and the conditions so many of us grow up in through my siblings and through people I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a difficult time period. And so to keep myself from spiraling out of control, I knew I needed structure again. So I re-enlisted in the Air Force Reserve because I knew if I did the Marine Corps Reserve and I started school, if they needed me, they was going to call me out of school. And I didn't want that. So I joined the Air Force. Shout out to the Air Force, but I realized that I was a Marine at heart. So that was like a square in a round hole. So that time, this Marine in the Air Force was a rough time, but I got through my 3 years Air Force Reserve. I started off at community college. I went to Monroe Community College in Rochester, and I studied social science. So sociology, philosophy, political science, you name it. I was studying like ways to think and see the world, and I was trying to inform my worldview. And I got involved in my community. I started working for our mayor. I got involved in some political campaigns. I got involved with our Democratic Party. I got involved with student government. I started doing a bunch of stuff in the community. So when I graduated from MCC, I applied to a bunch of schools at the advice of my mom and some of my advisors at MCC. So I applied to the Harvards, the Yales, the Amherst, the UPenns, some of the top tier schools, because I knew if I was going to be impactful, I had to have the tools to be so. And I knew I needed a name that would open doors. And so they started calling. And it was something about Yale that shocked me, because at the beginning, Yale was like the one I'm like, this, honestly, I felt like Yale was going to be more difficult to get into than Harvard. So, but Harvard was more interested, and Yale was like not really responsive. And it found out that Yale lost my whole application and stuff, so I had to send everything back. But then I got a call from Yale too, so I went out there to interview, and I was so intimidated by the admissions building, and that I had to walk around the block twice just to catch my breath and like work up the confidence to walk through those doors and put my best foot forward. But what stood out to me about Yale was it's literally in the hood. Yeah. So if you go to New Haven, you'll see this school that you hear about, this prestigious school where prime ministers and presidents and kings and
come from.
All these people are educated, right? Like it's literally in the hood. Wow. So I knew already that stood out to me. So when I went in there and started telling my story to admissions and why I wanted to go there, they got it, and I pretty much let them know, a lot of people want to go here because they want your name to open doors for them. But with the work I plan to do in the world, I want to bring value to that name.
That's right.
And so they were like, we're down, we get it. And I went to Yale, and just like MCC, I got a ton of support. But while I was at Yale, I got deep in my studies on inner cities and education. So go back to that mayor that I saw as a little kid launching his crusade for mayoral control. So for the summers, I became a fellow at the Institution for Social and Policy Studies at Yale under the direction of Jacob Hacker. And one of the ISPS fellows is now National Security Advisor to Joe Biden.
Mr. That's right. That's right.
So I got to also study under him for a little bit, but I told them, in spite of going to New York City or DC over the summers, I wanted to come home and work for this man named Bob Duffy, who was our chief of police in Rochester. He was our mayor, and he was the lieutenant governor under the first 4 years of Governor Andrew Cuomo for New York State. So I said, I want to come home. I want to work for this man. He's in a lot in the community, and I've been studying and writing essays about his stance on education and how it needs to serve people and educated citizenry and human development and educated workforce. And they're like, you want to go back to Rochester? What do you want to go back to Rochester for? What's in Rochester? And I'm like, no, trust me. So they was like, all right, you can go back to Rochester. So I went back. Bob had just left lieutenant governorship to take over the Chamber of Commerce. So I worked with him that summer, and I discovered workforce development, talent strategy, and the role civic leaders play in education. So these are business leaders, political leaders. Now I'm starting to understand that it's not always the elected people who have the decision-making power. And being in his orbit and having proximity to the decision-making process, I started to see how power works in real time and how sometimes the people who have the authority don't have the power. And I'm learning a ton. So I come back another summer, I do the same stuff, and then he offers me a full-time role. So at 27, I became the youngest executive at the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, the youngest Black executive at the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. And I build the Workforce Development, Talent Strategy, and Education Initiatives Office. And in that time, I was blessed to do so many things. And it got to a point where many people in our community thought I should run for political office. But when I did soul searching, I didn't feel in my heart that the Lord was permitting me to take that step at that time. So I grew a little bit restless. And then the CEO of Foundry reached out to Bob Duffy. And he said, you know, my company's been super successful. We went from 3 to over 50 employees at the time in about a year and a half, 2 years. We want to figure out a way to get involved in some of these challenges in Rochester. And my leader at Foundry is a man named Mike Collier, who is another stand-up human being. And so I meet with him. Bob's like, yeah, I know just a guy. I mean, he works at the chamber, but he might know a name or two. So I meet with him. So we're talking, and he's talking to me about Bitcoin and decentralized currency and racial equity and all of this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about this crypto Bitcoin stuff. But he's a nice guy. So I leave that meeting and he tells me he's going to tell Bob that he wants to hire me, and I'm not taking it serious because I'm not bought in yet. So then Mike's reaching out. I meet with his team over at Foundry, and I'm more impressed, and I'm starting to understand decentralized technology has a lot of potential. And now I'm getting away from what it's not to what it can be as it relates to a solution. Right. Many people talk about Black Wall Street, but some of these technologies, some of these decentralized infrastructures can actually make it happen.
Yes.
So I do my research. I go a little bit down the rabbit hole, and it's between this and another opportunity that came up at the time. And I prayed and I said, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, like, make this something I cannot walk away from. So Mike, on his own accord, decided to put a formal offer together. And when I saw that offer, I was like, okay, this is where you want me to be.
This is it.
And so I came on as Foundry's Director of Economic and Community Development. And in that time, I've launched an effort called Rock the Block, and we can talk about all that stuff. But
all right.
That's where I've been since December.
Well, I needed you to tell that story because I have stated for the record for the past year that this crypto space is bringing the most finest talents from all over the world to get involved in these companies. I'm so proud of you. And I wanted to have that conversation in front of the cameras so that everybody can see how phenomenal you are as not only a man, but, as a businessman, as a thinker, because you are a thinker. And I'm I'm blessed. I'm glad that you took Foundry because now, we had an opportunity to meet each other through this space. And just from two different sides of the world, of the country, we are going to really, I think, be the change that we want to see. So I'm super excited about that. I don't know. I thought I was hearing some feedback. Maybe it's me, but I'm super excited about that. So tell us really quickly. So Foundry hired you on, and you have this phenomenal role, which allows you to be impactful, which is your whole get up. But tell me a little bit about Foundry. What is Foundry?
So the mission of Foundry is to empower a decentralized network and accelerate that in North America. And we're pretty much protocol agnostic, but we believe in decentralized infrastructure. And that's the mission of our of our company, to empower decentralized infrastructure. So we see these technologies as democratizing a lot of what is centralized today, whether it's the delivery of telecom, or if it's something, a staking protocol or Bitcoin. Foundry's role is to empower decentralized infrastructure. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Digital Currency Group, and their mission is to accelerate a new financial system. And so DCG has about a handful of like primary subsidiaries. So TradeBlock, HQ, Foundry, CoinDesk, Luno, Genesis, Grayscale, right? These are all huge institutions within our world. And then there's like 120 in the family of DCG companies. But the purpose of DCG as an investor is to accelerate this new decentralized, more democratized financial system. And ultimately, what I see my role in, what I've discovered my purpose is I get happy about applying these decentralized technologies to address socioeconomic challenges.
Yeah, that is absolutely awesome. So for somebody that is still sitting here saying, well, I hear him, but what does Foundry actually do?
Yeah. So the backbone of Foundry is Bitcoin mining. We support about 10 to 20 different staking protocols, but the bread and butter is proof of work and it's Bitcoin mining.
Absolutely. So that is,
we do everything from equipment financing to proprietary hosting to a number of logistics. Like we'll get you miners. Like we do a lot. Like we do a lot, mostly around Bitcoin mining. Absolutely. We have the largest Bitcoin mining pool in the world. We manage the largest pool in the world. So
when, and I'm just gonna ask, since you said that, that's what I was trying to pull out, because we got a lot of people in our community that are always getting scammed by people who have them investing in Bitcoin mining pools. Is there a way for a regular everyday person to invest in something that Foundry has going on? Let me ask that first.
So DCG is our primary investor, but I will say, as of recently in my work, I'm going to be launching a non-for-profit. So playing off your name, On the Block, is going to be called Rock the Block, which is a play on Rochester and blockchain, where we are going to do what I'm doing now, which this Rock the Block is going to be like this umbrella agency that hosts a number of the different efforts that I'm going to be leading. The premier effort being the Mining Engineer Fellowship, which has taken young inner city adults, graduates of the Rochester City School District, who are residents within Rochester still, and has given them a living wage at $60,000 a year in upstate New York, which is a very competitive wage up here. It's a very high wage with only a high school education, and is giving them skills, everything from blockchain technology to electrical work to you name it, in order to, be a mining engineer. But in addition to that, they've been so successful in some of the training that we're bottling it up now, and we are creating a new business service called Foundry Deployed. And what that will be is a white glove service where the Mining Engineer Fellowship will serve as a feeder into Foundry Deployed. And whether they are deploying miners or taking miners out, or network switches or wire management, or pretty much setting up the actual physical infrastructure for a mining environment, Deploy will be a service that you can call and who will set that up.
That is absolutely awesome. And so, man, and I like to play on deployed. I heard deploy. I said, okay, here we go. He brought the military in there. And so one of the things that I do know, everything that we endure, everything that we go through in our lives brings us to a specific place. And so you already know, I don't have to say I feel like or any of those things. We already know that your discipline in, first and foremost, sports, because sports requires discipline. but the military absolutely requires discipline. And the individuals that you are bringing into your space right now for this Foundry deploy, for this different Rock the Block project that you're working on, how are you incorporating discipline into into this whole, I'm going to say, into this system? And the reason I'm asking this question for our listeners is because what we're seeing right now, whether we own a business or whether we're looking at our family and friends, we're realizing that people, a lot of people, including our adult children, do not have the discipline that they need to actually be successful, maintain being successful without somebody just really having to stay there. So what are you doing to help implement some discipline in the lives of the individuals that are coming on board to start these mining ventures?
So to be frank with you, I tried to create as a red carpet opportunity as possible, because I believe that when you offer people something that is dignified and worthy of their respect, they will respect it and they will respect you. So that's the foundation of it all. I'll be honest with you, I think, and this is going to be a candid conversation, I think I've learned so much about what intervention to us looks like. And I'll tell you that because so many of us have been through so much that it's hard to help us, because sometimes help can feel like hurt. And so as of recently, like, I've started to bring people in to do some of the mentoring, life coaching, and the psychological support, because in order to really develop that self-starter discipline, I'm learning that you have to help people work through the patterns, the habits, the behaviors, and the norms that they have developed that might not necessarily be in service of them as it relates to getting them to success. So that has been a recent thing that I'm introducing into the program, because my natural orientation was, when civilians can be civilians, right, to go and rely on like the athletic discipline or the military discipline, and it's not that structure. So you can't expect the same results. And so what I'm learning is there's the deprogramming of self-sabotage, of doubt, of disbelief, of fear, of intimidation has to be as much a part of this as everything else. The literacy enumeration, the numeracy remediation, the financial literacy, the technological literacy, the tech skills training, the driver's education, the transportation grant, the $6,000, like, this has to be as much a part of this as any of those features. And so that's something that we recently added to the fellowship. I can't hear you.
Probably because after
There you go.
doing Zoom, I'm still on mute.
Right.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I just really take my hat off to you, again, being so young and doing all that you're doing. Because when we speak about workforce development, I think I was one of the only people or employers in the city of Los Angeles that really did grab hold of the workforce development program here in Los Angeles. And I hired in upwards of, I'm going to say, I think at the most I had 25 women working for me that were coming from workforce development, welfare to work. And I found out quickly that just because they get employed does not mean that their problems disappear and some of these other things. And so I literally had to hire somebody to come in, and we did every single morning. We worked on self before we even got into the work day, because I really recognized, like, immediately, like, I'm telling these women to leave these issues at the door, but when they leave them at the door, they're still thinking about them, and it has all to do. And it's just so many things that our community, and only we understand our community, right? To be able to be that change and to bring those programs in. And so I was just wondering how you were handling that. And again,
Yeah,
that's
and so I'll be honest with you, right? I didn't, because I've been so used to, as a workforce developer like you, I've been so used to always coaching folks into a opportunity that's not optimal. So I thought just making the opportunity optimal would solve so many of those issues, but it doesn't change those
no,
issues, because some of them are some of them are environmental, and until you give somebody the agency to navigate those external environmental factors and the wherewithal to govern themselves through those situations, you're not really helping them. And I've learned that the goal here is economic self-determinance, right? Like, how do we get people into a position where conditions are favorable for them to make the decision of choice, not the decision of last resort?
absolutely.
And so that's become the focus of this. And the long-term goal for this is to design, hopefully, a model that will show other organizations and companies and sectors why these investments are necessary if you're trying to upskill and integrate the low skill, no skill, marginalized population into economic life as full functioning, contributing members of your organization. So that's the long-term goal for what I'm trying to do, like as a workforce developer at heart, is to show how you address these attitudinal barriers, how you address these emotional, social barriers, how you address these skills gaps, and ultimately these enthusiasm gaps. Like, how do you get people where they want to be,
Right.
But at the same time, letting them know, yo, just because high school ain't for you don't mean you a rapper.
Right. Absolutely. I
Just because you don't like to read and you don't want to study and do math, don't mean you was meant to rap, because you ain't that good at that either.
Well, I have a question for you, because sitting with you and just in the couple of hours that we had a chance to sit together, I feel your passion. I feel your heart. I know that it is so genuine and that you want more sometimes for folks than they want for themselves. Let me just ask you a question. Right now, based on where we are with blockchain, based on where we are with Bitcoin, based on now that you're understanding the technology behind Bitcoin, what are your thoughts as it relates to getting our people acclimated to understanding that this new money is here to stay? This blockchain, this Bitcoin is not going anywhere. What do you want to say?
I'm gonna be honest with you, they have to see it. We are a visual people. I've done less to talk and I've done more just to show. And so, you know how we can be. We got to see it. The same thing with the drug dealers, right? Young cats want to sell drugs because they see it. I see what you driving. I see what you wearing. I see, who you kicking it with. There is the allure of a life out of suffering. And if this is a way out of suffering, I'm down. But I've also become so much more sensitive to this trauma thing with us is real. We done been promised so many things before that didn't pan out or that disappointed or let us down, that we have to experience and see it. And I'm okay with that. And I also am okay with, like, now I see, like, you talk about folks with the revolving door, whether it's jail or prison. You, like, when you just said, I see your passion and I know, like, you want more for people that want you, like, so I've learned that too, right? And one of the things that I'm praying about now is for God to give me the patience. Number one, not to judge, because we really don't know where somebody is coming from. So just because you're not ready or you're not listening or you don't believe, I can't judge you because, some of us come from backgrounds where we've been getting cussed out, beat, lied to. The boyfriend came first, the girlfriend came first.
Yeah.
Hungry.
Yes.
Just like some of us, I mean, from day one, it
Yes.
was crazy. And I understand now, like, you know what? Sometimes you're gonna get through, sometimes you're not. But the Bible says one man sows, another man waters, but it's God who giveth the increase, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes you gotta just do your part, and like that's okay. Like
That's it.
you cannot, like, if God Almighty ain't down here going against our will, making all of us walk in the uncompromised will of God. Come on now, who are me? Who am I? Who are you? We got to have respect for people's will just like God does. So I'm learning that, like, in this process about, you know what, it's okay. If you, like, it's okay, and you gotta pour in and give the energy to those who really want it. You gotta be patient with those who aren't there yet, and you gotta respect those who need a little bit more time to see that the world is changing, that opportunities are before you. You gotta respect where they are, and you gotta let somebody else come along, and you gotta let the Father of us all do that hard work that only He can do.
Absolutely. And so I guess at this point, the biggest question a lot of folks may be having, and we may have some questions out there, but I'm going to help them with this question. Because we did have some folks say, well, how can we, or is Foundry hiring? Is Foundry downsizing because of the crypto winter? What is Foundry doing right now?
So right now we are I think across DCG, we're in a hiring freeze. Just because we've grown. So we went from 2 people to 170 in 3 years. Mind you, I was employee number 68, and now we're at 170.
Wow.
So since I joined in December, we've added 100 people. So right now we're in a hiring freeze because we've grown so fast. We need to just absorb all these people.
Right.
So I'm guessing in a couple months, we most certainly will be hiring. You'll see us out there with our barcode, like you've seen us at every other conference, saying we are hiring. Scan our barcode and see how you can help.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple months, folks, before you can go to Foundry. And then your fellows program. The fellows need to be in, and I'm going to say fellas, sisters.
Fellows, we got one girl,
sisters.
so it's fellows. We got one girl, so they're fellows.
Okay, they're fellows too. I got to be politically correct, she, they, we, all those pronouns that I don't, we not, I don't know. I'm not even gonna get into that. But how do they become a fellow? Do they have to be a resident of Rochester, New York in general? Like, what does that look like?
So right now, yes, you do have to be a Rochester resident because we're here. But I think our next program will start in Buffalo, and we'll probably be taking another cohort in the winter.
Okay.
We still getting the model down with this first cohort. Like I just told you, like even with the coaching and mentoring and mental, like, so we still trying to get the formula down. So cohort number 2, you are definitely going to be welcomed into a much more structured. Because now
you cut away the fat and made some things happen. Right. No, and that's it's just admirable what you're doing, and I know it's a great thing. I can see it, I can feel it. I've been really paying attention to the Bitcoin mining space specifically. I was sharing with you, about my son working as a Bitcoin miner down in Texas, and just really watching what these Bitcoin mining companies are actually able to do to just change lives. And it's just actually, in my opinion, right now in the space, one of the biggest and best things going for our community. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do to definitely partner with you and at the same time really help DCG get their mission done, because I have some thoughts about that as well. and what we can do to make those things happen. And that being said, I just want to ask you another question about this space. So, how long? I know you said you got into cryptocurrency so you got the job in December. So,
Mhm.
right before that is when you started learning about Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And what has been your biggest takeaway in this Bitcoin blockchain space? What would you just share with someone? What's been most important, I guess, in the Bitcoin and blockchain space, learning wise? Like what?
So learning wise, so I always say, like, our grandparents grew up, couldn't even use the same bathrooms as white people, couldn't use the same water fountains, couldn't sit at the same counters, um, didn't know what the internet was, didn't know what a DVD, a cell phone, FaceTime, internet, social media, right? The biggest takeaway is, number one, the world is going to look remotely different when I am like an older person.
Mm,
Stop making plans around where the world is and think about where the world is going to be. That blockchain technology, aside from Bitcoin, which I have become somewhat of a Bitcoin maximalist, I love the Bitcoin network. I love deploying these miners and building my team and seeing how the proof of work infrastructure creates gainfully employing jobs and
yes.
does so much as it relates to energy usage, like balancing out some energy grids. And people don't understand that Bitcoin mining will be a dark horse for renewable energy too. It's
Yes.
so funny that, they want cheap wins, talk about how much power we use, but I can't tell you how many Bitcoin mining operations have contributed a great deal to balancing out an energy grid, to cut down blackouts and brownouts and imbalances, and at the same time make some of these major environmental energy projects work too.
Right.
But blockchain technology, aside from um, Bitcoin or proof of work or staking, right, is going to be the future. Decentralized, democratized technologies, whether it's DAOs or NFTs or helium, this is the future. And what I want us to understand is you can't wait until widespread adoption has happened and think you're going to be the success story. You got to get in now, but don't leverage yourself beyond what you can afford to lose either. You
Yes.
got to be smart. I hear you always talk about dollar cost averaging. You got to be smart and you got to do your own research. And that's another thing. Like, the literacy, numeracy, educational gap is like working against us as the world's becoming more technical.
Yes.
So we have to prioritize really becoming educated. And what does a real functional education look like, and what does it enable you to do, and what are you going to need to do in order to keep up where the world is going? So that's my biggest takeaway, is that Bitcoin, number one, I think we will be using and we will be talking about things in terms of sats.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bitcoin will become versatile in that it'll be a store of value and a medium of exchange. I don't think it'll be either or. I think it'll do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, and this is coming away from my time with you at DFR, the self-sovereignty movement, being in it from the military, and I'm paying very close attention to the war in Ukraine, rumors of war in Taiwan, and how fast and how fragile society can be once we saw, the unprepared response to a global pandemic. And that is cryptocurrency. Like what you see in these war-torn places, it's these decentralized infrastructures that are being used.
Mm-hmm.
So even as there's concentration of thought and ideas and worldviews in America, we got sectarian conflict. We on track to, civil conflict here, maybe. There's people who don't there's people right now saying your vote, my vote, votes in Detroit and Philly and Pittsburgh and Miami, those votes don't count. Atlanta, those votes don't count.
Yes.
And we just need to be prepared for that too.
We need to be prepared.
We need to be prepared for that too. I just feel like the world, and this is just my very real, honest evaluation of where things are going. We in for a roller coaster ride because conflict has always remade how the world operates, how society is set up, who the winners and losers are. And it seems like there's conflict here and conflict all over the world. And we just need to be ready. So I think even hand in hand, with the decentralized, democratized technology movement is also this self-sovereignty movement, because we've seen how fragile civilization is.
Fragile, very, very fragile.
Very fragile.
And that was a great word. And I wanted to, anybody that's listening to this right now can really understand, just based on your timeline coming through, seeing what's happening in other countries with our military, just understanding the fact that they could change this if they really wanted to, but they don't. And just seeing where we're moving and how, just as you said, our financial literacy, all of our literacy, we've got to catch up very, very quickly. And we've got to be able to, on the drop of a dime, make some different decisions than we've been making. And that self-sovereignty piece is huge.
It's huge.
Huge.
And I'm glad that you guys are discussing that, because we've seen in the pandemic how easy it is to go to the grocery store and the shelves be bare. We've seen how easy it is for global trade routes, especially nautical and maritime trade routes, to be backed up and blocked. And there's no telling the next time you're going to get some of this stuff that we don't grow, make, or source here. So it's just very important that people become more resourceful as we face a very uncertain future.
Absolutely. And let me say this, since we're on the topic of self-sovereignty, and some of you may not listen to me on the radio, but Monday I reported that over the weekend, the farmers have started killing and selling their livestock because of the drought, and their crops. They're killing their crops themselves. So we've got farmers that are not farming anymore. The Black farmers, that's a whole nother conversation, because they're doing some things with them as it relates to funding and not allowing them to really be able to farm, actually paying folks not to farm. We have really got to figure this thing out, and we got to figure it out quickly, because so many things are changing. So we won't go down that path, but just start doing your research since you're listening and we're having this conversation. Adrian, how do they get in contact with you specifically?
You can email me at ahale@foundrydigital.com. Again, that's ahale@foundrydigital.com. And you can call me or text me at 917-821-8109.
I thought I was the only crazy person that gave out my phone number, but what's the number again?
917-821-8109.
All right. Well, that is awesome information. And I know that you will get a ton of folks that not only want to help and assist with Rock the Block, because I am super excited about Rock the Block. I think that name hits it. And not only that, the name hits it, but the work that you're doing already speaks for itself. And let's see if we had any questions or anything from the audience. If you ladies had any questions or anything that we need to wrap up, because we are pushing on. Let's see. There's a good question. So HT asks, how did you break through your specific trauma?
Honestly, I feel like trauma is in levels. I think I've only broken through certain levels of that trauma, and watching my fellows kind of begin to deal with theirs has motivated me to also want to, revisit some things I didn't think I needed to deal with or pay attention to. So I'll say I'm still in the process of breaking, right? And I also want to send this out. Just because you're successful, like you went to great schools, you got a great job, you make great money, you drive a great car, you live in a great house, doesn't mean that you're healthy and whole. And I think a lot of us as people of color, like we have to realize, because we try to hide our hurt, our pain, and our trauma behind our success. And I don't want to take his moment out of context, but an eye-opening moment for me was actually the Will Smith, Chris Rock moment, because, and I have a great deal of respect for both of these men, but for Will to react that way in that environment at his biggest moment and before the moment of another brother, Questlove, I just know, and after reading his book and getting a deeper dive into him after that moment, I read his book and I saw how he talked about the shame and the guilt of not helping his mom when she was getting, she was a victim of domestic violence from his father. And, I just can see how there was some undealt with things. And to be frank with you, his reaction, like he came out a couple of weeks ago, and I can still tell how much of who he is based on how people see him. And I think the fact that people saw that hurt him more than what he actually did, because I'm not sure he knows he matters. If that makes sense. I'm not sure he knows he matters without the box office numbers, without the millions of dollars, without the success. And what I want us to know as people of color is that take everything away, our fraternities, our sororities, our titles, our doctor, pastor, bishop, apostle, president, CEO, director, vice president, congressman, mayor, city, right? We got to know we matter. Whether you got Louis Vuitton on your back or Hanes.
Yes.
You matter. And I'm just using his example because watching him in this past couple of months, I can just, I reflect and I see certain things that I know, like,
he's still hurt.
He's still hurt.
He's still hurt. He's still hurting.
And he's hurting for other reasons.
Yeah.
From my point of view, right? I think there's a lot of dependency on external affirmation and external value. Yeah. I'm not sure he knows he matters. And we got to all do our work as just Black people in America, where we constantly are being shown we don't matter. We have to know that we matter. And so I think I would say I'm still breaking my trauma.
Absolutely. And I agree with that 100%. And thank you for that question from our listener. If there's any other questions, we are hitting the top of our hour, and we respect the fact that Adrian is on the East Coast. Yes. And it's 7:00 here, but it's definitely late 10:00 there. And so we want to make sure that he is on his best game and that he's rested up. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to just, and he's already spoke profoundly. So I don't even want to say one last word, because the brother has preached to me. I know that I need to continue to get in my head that I matter without all of these things. Yes, that all of us are taking away that message.
And I'll tell you this too. First off, Najah, thank you so much for being who you are from the moment that I met you. Because sometimes, there are intergenerational differences in our community. And just having an elder like you acknowledge, like the effort, the energy, it means a lot, because I know you understand in ways that some of the people I'm around every day don't understand.
Yeah.
And some of the people locally, like there's just a huge like in our own, you know how every community has their mess. And in our community, there's a huge, generational divide. And so just having somebody be supportive and just uplifting and caring and concerning, it means a lot to me. So I want to let you know, I beyond thank you for all of that. And even though the show's about to end, our relationship is not going to end.
Definitely not. And I'm going to struggle with that snow up in Rochester, but I am on my way. I am not the one for some cold, but I'm telling you, I got to get up there to you, and I got to get up there to Buffalo. We were coming through, long story, through the tour and going through Buffalo. Like my heart in Buffalo was heavy. Just even stop at a restaurant coming through there, my heart was heavy. It is so much that we have to do, and I know that I cannot do it all, but I know that now I got a brother named Adrian Hale that's up there, and I'm going to come to support and do whatever I can do to make this thing pop, because we need your model right here in South Central LA. We definitely do, and I'm looking forward to bringing Foundry and Rock the Block and all those things right on in this space, because we don't need to recreate the wheel. We can just get behind those that are doing these things and really make things happen. So I'm looking forward to working with you. And again, Rock the Block, Foundry, DCG, bringing just ideas and things that we have that we know what we need to do, but it's also important to be able to get with those companies that literally have the funding that can make it happen. And that's the critical part of a lot of things that we're missing. A lot of times we have great ideas, but we don't really have the structure or the industries that can get behind it and actually give those meaningful jobs. And so I just want to say thank you to you again. You have forever gotten my support. I'm a ride or die. You'll learn that soon. And we're going to make some things happen. And so I appreciate you. And ladies and gentlemen, you can reach out again to Adrian. He gave his information. If you missed it, you can go back and replay this video. We won't do that again. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for joining us this day on the Block with Adrian Hale. And he's working currently for Foundry, but he has a separate project called Rock the Block. So really be watching and paying attention and looking for that. Are you on social media, Adrian?
Yes.
Okay. Where can they find you on social media?
On Twitter, Adrian Hale, and LinkedIn, Adrian Hale.
And just spelled exactly like it is?
Yep.
Okay. So we definitely want to get, first of all, go follow him so we can find out what he's doing with this phenomenal group of individuals that are fellows and fellow ladies. We got to get us another name for the fellows. Right. But anyway, but with that, again, thank you to each and every one of you for joining us today on the Block. And just thank you to our incredible staff that put this together. And again, Adrian, I will be seeing you before December in Rochester, New York. I'm super excited about that.
Let us know. Let me know.
Absolutely. Peace and blessings to each
Thank
and
you so
every one.
much.
And thank you so much. And you all have an incredible rest of your day.
All right. See y'all later.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
This summer on the Digital Financial Revolution Tour, we travel to over 30 cities across the U.S. to spread the word about Bitcoin, generational wealth, and financial freedom. By popular demand, the revolution continues. Join the Queen of Crypto, Najah Roberts, and her special guests for a 3-day deep dive this October 21st through the 23rd in the ATL. Get your tickets early because this will sell out. Visit dfrexperience.com for more info.